Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Full House Games. I'm your host, Caleb House, and joining me today is Ben Clinic, and we have a lovely matchup between David, who is running Omnitell, and we got to see in the big Legacy event last week, and Charlie, who we all know is running Merfolk from his countless times on camera.
Yeah, I'd have to say probably the highest island count in any video we'll have seen up until this point, both mono blue decks. You know, running a couple of utility lands. Charlie will have his Mutavaults and his Caverns. David will have, I believe he runs Soul Lands, does he not?
Yeah, he's running a couple of City of Traders and a couple of
Ancient Tombs
as well.
And obviously the fetch lands to get the max value for those Ponders and those Brainstorms.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we'll probably be seeing, quite a high number of basics by Legacy standards in these decks. So should be interesting, and that's going to really help Charlie with his Merfolk, just be able to beat through, not worrying about anything. But for the most part, I mean, if David has something in play.
Well, have you seen the Omnitell deck before?
Yes, I have.
Okay, they're not really running creatures, so anything that Charlie puts on board, the Island Walk is mildly redundant for.
Sure. He can just show and tell Emrakul. I mean, obviously the preferred way is...
No, David is not running Emrakul.
Oh, is this the Omniscience?
This is Omniscience,
yes. Omniscience into the Infinite version. Okay.
Yes. So, for the viewers who don't know, David Brocchi's deck, the combo is basically to show and tell in Omniscience or Dream Halls, and then basically cast a free Enter the Infinite, draw your entire library. And that gets pretty dangerous for Charlie when he has...
I've heard 50 cards in hand are pretty good.
No way to deal with that. Yeah, I mean, getting all your land drops is something everyone talks about, right?
Yeah.
So, David's deck can be very quick, especially against something like Charlie's, who I think probably doesn't necessarily have a good matchup here, because David is obviously playing a very unfair deck.
He is running the 4-Force 4 days main board though, so he does have protection.
True.
Okay, so let's look at the hand. I think we're seeing double City of Traders in Brocchi's hand there.
So if he hits...
Can't get quite a good look at it. Charlie's chucking it back. Maybe see a better 6.
If Brocchi hits a couple more blue, we could see a rather early show and tell. We could also see a rather early Dream Halls, which is the alternate win con, and it's not actually that bad to sort of play when you think about it, because you'll hopefully only have to discard one spell to cast your Enter the Infinite.
Yeah, I mean, pitching a Brainstorm to cast an Enter the Infinite, not a big, not a loss at all when you're drawing your deck. Probably not going to need that Brainstorm, but I
don't know. What did you put back on top? So yeah, I feel like David probably has the higher percentage chance here, just because.
Although first turn Aetherval from Charlie, I think I did see a Lord or two in his hand.
Okay.
So he could just very really beat down quickly and make it a quick game that way. There's a Pact of Negation on the top. Yep, he's putting that to the bottom. I didn't see what the other card is, but Brocchi doesn't want it, so...
Yeah, so if he's got a show until here, he's got the Soul Lands that we talked of.
There's a City of Traders right there.
A Pact of Negation will basically deal with any forces.
So can David go off the turn he plays show and tell, or is it the turn after?
He has to have Enter the Infinite in hand, and he has to have Omniscience in hand. So I can't quite see whether he does or not, but he's getting some nice preordains here, which could definitely lead to that. What are you seeing on top there? Yeah, so 2 more lands, which is not anything he needs right now, with a couple of fetches in hand and those souls.
Lord of Atlantis out for Charlie.
And there's a Ponder. And that's going to do some really good work for Brocchi, who
Show and tell is all basically just manipulation until you find your pieces, right? That's the whole idea. It's manipulation, protection, and the actual win con.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
basically, what we're going to see David here do is just cast a bunch of ponders and a bunch of preordains.
Yeah, and he's got so much time too. Like, nothing from Charlie on turn 1 into, or was it 8th of Al?
It was turn 1, 8th of Al, but that's not turn 1 pressure. And I don't think David actually counters a lot of Charlie's spells anyway. He really just wants to use them for protecting his own plays.
Yeah.
So, 8th of Al maybe allows him to get out of the gates a little bit quicker for turn 2 and 3 because he'll get some stuff down there, but it means he didn't have a relevant turn 1 play. And if he'd played Curse Catcher or something, that would have been something that David would have had to play around. You can't just ponder blindly. And it also would have meant that would have been coming in for 2 once that Lord landed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, David's still on a healthy 20 life here. He hasn't been affected at all.
Yeah, so the worst that could happen is he gets hit for like 2 this turn, and there it is.
Yeah.
So
he could actually have, hypothetically been hit for 4 if Charlie had the right stuff, because that 8th of Al's on 2 now, and he's got a bit of mana. But has Charlie passed the turn there? Yeah, he has. So he has nothing.
So he might have caught wind of what David is running and be trying to play around that. That is a lot of City of Traders in hand, I think.
That's not great for your land drops. David and Charlie, they get along quite well, so I imagine that they've talked to each other about the Omnitell deck a number of times, so he definitely knows what he's on.
Both of them were in the top 8 together of the Big Legacy event, so...
yeah, they were. I don't think they met, but they were both there.
Yeah, they would have definitely been aware of each other. Okay, so we're looking at a Trick Bind.
Trick Bind,
the
8th of Al.
Very nice.
That's some nice tech. Here's an interesting question.
Is that City of Traders on the battlefield?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
Is there an infinite combo in Magic that doesn't lose to a Trick Bind? I've asked a number of judges of this, and all of them kind of go, probably? It's quite difficult to think of one that doesn't instantly just lose out to a Trick Bind. Just Trick Bind in response.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. An infinite combo.
Okay, so we got a little bit more pressure on Charlie's side. Would have been able to cantrip that. Got a Mutavault down, so next turn is not going to be relevant at all. We're going to see quite an amount of pressure.
But we're looking at David's Dreamhalls here, and he hasn't taken any damage other than that.
This is
that Lord there, so he'll be down on 9 next turn. But with all the free spells he can muster, this is not going to look good for Charlie.
What you have to remember though is Dreamhalls it affects the whole board. Whatever it says, Charlie can do as well.
True. But he's looking at a lot of he's looking at a clone, a phantasmal image, and just a lot of and a daze, I think was the other one, which is really not going to affect Brochy here.
Okay, so he's pitched Ponder to cast an End to the Infinite, by the looks of it. And this is about to get nasty if this resolves, which it is.
So, Dreamhalls costs... Oh, of course, the other City of Traders has died.
Oh, that's why,
So
okay.
we're looking at 6 mana from David, and he's just going to go off here. There's no if, buts, or maybes about this. Charlie, with only a daze in hand, is not going to be able to stop the Pain Train. Yeah, so Show and Tell basically a dead card. And we get to see some of the delightful tech for David here.
Yeah, he's pitched Show and Tell to play Omniscience, and now everything's free. Just Cunning Wish.
And Cunning Wish.
What's he going to get?
Wish will fetch him Research and Development. Research and Development for Lab Maniac. And then maybe a Ponder. So we'll see a Ponder or a Preordain come down, and he'll just draw that Lab Maniac, cast the Lab Maniac, and then draw. And he has some really safe options here.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way, he does have Force of Will in hand currently.
Correct, but like you said, I think Split Second would just kill his deck if he were to, say, get hit by a Sudden Shock, or something else along those lines with Split Second that will actually deal with his deck.
Sure, what would Sudden Shock do?
2 damage to
target
creature.
to the Lab Maniac itself, because you couldn't respond to it.
Yeah. Because ordinarily, if you just drop a kill spell in
here's what you do,
Charlie's
right?
position.
The split second happens, the Lab Maniac dies, that's resolves, the Ponder's on the stack, you forcibly your own Ponder. Which isn't ideal, but that's what you have to do to not die by decking yourself.
Sure. But if you're very prepared for this combo, and no one is going to be, it does have a very safe setup in the metagame. That's very nice. Some echoing truth that Charlie's looking at there, but I think it's probably too little too late.
Yeah.
Because if David has that Dream Holes or that Enter the Infinite, it is just go time for him usually. And he probably won't play it unless he can back it up with said Enter the Infinite or a Omniscience to then cast Enter the Infinite, basically.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about Charlie's sideboarding here, because I'd be interested to see what he does, specifically regarding days. Because I maybe take out days too often, but I'm a big fan of watching how my opponent plays, and if they play around days, take it out. Like, if they're just constantly playing it around it, take it out, and then maybe chuck it back in occasionally if they're starting to get a little bit greedy. Like, if they're starting to not play around it. But it's one of those things, if they're constantly playing around it, it's already doing its job.
Yeah.
So, I think David does have a lot of time here, and maybe if we see him playing around it more, I don't think he played around it like he was jamming Ponders with nothing, but like Dream Holes, for example, he waited until he could Dream Holes with 1 mana. Show and Tell, he waited, I think we're going to see him play around days really efficiently here, so maybe Charlie tries to kind of next level him and bring in some pressure, and just sort of represent days as opposed to actually having it.
Right, absolutely. And it's the same sort of deal when you're running Pyroblast against a blue deck. You've got to... if you are the blue deck, you've got to be aware that they might bring in Pyroblast or Red Elemental Blast, because it is just such a valuable card against you. Can kill Jace for 1 red mana. I can think of no other spells that could attest to that.
Yeah, it's very
except
powerful.
For Bolt, actually. Bolt will do it if they do not Fate Seal.
Yes. But Red Elemental Blast will do it regardless.
Yeah. The Red Elemental Blast is like a much better Bolt in these sort of matchups.
Yeah. It's situational, but against something like David's deck, which is mono blue, it's just insanely powerful.
If you just Pyroblast his Enter the Infinite out of the skies, then you will probably have clear sailing for quite some time, just because it's such a powerful card. Okay,
if you're Charlie here, you're on the play. Obviously, the best hand you look at is something like 2 islands, a Mutavault, a bunch of relevant spells, and maybe a Force of Will, like a bunch of creatures and a Force of Will. Disruption creature. Now, if you open a hand and it's all creatures or it's all counter spells, is this a hand that you want to keep? Because there's an argument to be made for you can just be the beatdown and kill him before he does anything. And there's an argument with the handful of counter magic where he's running like a very specific set of spells that he needs to resolve, so maybe you can just get him that way.
Sure. I'm probably more inclined to agree with the counter magic hand over just a hand of creatures. I would be pitching a handful of creatures back, because it is definitely not the situation you want to be in, and that's a good situation you want to be in.
Yeah, if the
curse catchers.
If the creatures are curse catchers, then the situation changes entirely.
Yeah, and if David wants to play anything here, and Charlie has left in those days, then he's got to be playing around 2 obvious dazes and a 3rd hidden one.
And Wasteland, surprisingly relevant here. There's a lot of things with like Ancient Tomb and like and City of Traders where they're already killing their own land, so if you then kill their other soul land, you can really choke them on mana for a bit. But I think David, seeing that's just gonna try and keep his basics out as opposed to his soul lands. Are we seeing a City of Traders in hand there?
So this is interesting. I am not sure whether you maybe sacrifice a Curse Catcher here to
make him crack the fetch of the Brainstorms.
Yeah, make him crack that fetch.
Yeah,
but he is got a notoriously large amount of hand manipulation.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be like, oh, I've taken him off the brainstorm. He will have another one. And if Charlie has something like a Lord in hand and just needs to rip another blue, that represents, 4 damage that's pounding through next turn. So you definitely want to have that online if you've got it. So I think it just really depends on what's in Charlie's hand as to whether or not he wants to do that. But I mean, David has got the perfect brainstorm there. Put 2 back, shuffle them away.
Yeah, basically. And we saw him play very nicely around that by going first turn fetch into second turn fetch and making sure to only crack one of those fetches, which is a nightmare for our editors. But it is very much a good play. And we should see a lot of that coming from David.
Okay, and I don't think we see David playing around Daze here at all. Maybe it's just one of those, well, I have more manipulation than you have Dazes, so I may as well just keep jamming them, and if you do it, you put yourself behind. And I mean, look, he trades up. The Ponder was essentially a removal spell there, and that's, I guess, what he wanted it to do.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all he wants, actually, in his position.
Double Wasteland here is miserable, though.
1 for 1. Yeah. Wasteland is never really going to get you out of anything. No. But Charlie, no, I guess he really needed that mana. So, he could have Wastelanded in response to sort of elicit the same effect as sacking the first Curse Catcher to make David pay for that Brainstorm. But I really don't think it's worth it at all.
Okay, so we've got an 8th of Isle here. Do we have a Lord in hand? I think I'm catching the glimpse of a Lord.
I can definitely see a Force of Will, which is good news for Charlie. And quite possibly a Phantasmal Image as well, I think is the other card.
Okay.
So he's got something to pitch, which is really good. If David gets the combo off and doesn't have protection for that Enter the Infinite, you just jam it and hope that you'll have enough time before he draws another one. I mean, he will be in full top deck mode, and he has some of the best manipulation around because he is running blue. But
I think the key to playing Show and Tell or Omnitell or any of these variants is to know when to do it. Like when to just, because some people will just jam all the time and just die, and some people will just, sit back too patiently, make sure they have all the counter spells, make sure they can fight through everything. Sometimes you've just got to go, I think he doesn't have it, jam it. Sometimes you just have to know when to play. Knowing when to play Show and Tell is what wins you games.
Very nice. So seeing is that the Regery?
Yeah, I believe, it's +1/+1 an Island Walk, I believe?
+1/+1, and whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, you can untap untap a permanent. Tap or untap a permanent.
Lovely.
So,
okay, Dream Holes, Islands.
It's pretty good.
So we just hit a Dream Holes off that Brainstorm there. So we may see him try and jam it this turn. He has got a lot of pressure on him, so he needs to. He's going to start getting hit hard here because, I mean, if you're in David's position, that 8th of Isle I believe is on 2. If he plays a Lord untapped, we're looking at some serious damage. So David probably needs to try and jam that Dream Holes this turn.
That's right.
If he plays the City of Traders, he can play around Daze because he'll have 6 mana. Thing is, does he have the other pieces of the combo?
He won't necessarily be able to play around Force of Will.
No.
David only running the 4-pack of Negations.
Is he not running Force of Will at all?
No, he doesn't like Force of Will because it is basically a 2-for-1. You've got to discard a card as well. And I think cards are very crucial in his deck. And the spells that you want to generally be cancelling, you'll be able to go off that turn.
Sure. And I mean, I can see that. Like, if you don't run it in the Sneak and Show version because if you Show and Tell, you don't win that turn. You win the turn after. So you can't pay for the Pact. But, I mean, David's got a high number of basics. They're not easily disruptible. And he, the turn he casts Pact is usually the turn he's going to win. So,
right.
What does it matter? It's a lot better when you don't have to pay the upkeep cost because you've won.
Yeah. It's always a good feeling. That being said, it's a very awkward card to be trying to counter stuff with. I would think maybe of running some maybe some Flusterstorms or some Swan Songs from Theros, just to sort of, because they are very cheap counter magic, which is what David's sort of going here, and they don't have the downside that they can't be used until the turn you go off, or they can't be used.
I do believe David actually does have a Flusterstorm. I think I saw one in hand earlier.
Okay, yeah.
So that's quite good. I think Swan Song's maybe a little bit bad in David's deck though, because he doesn't have the pressure if you give them that token too early trying to counter something.
But I mean, you could run something like a Spell Pierce or a some of the much cheaper counter magic to sort of offset.
Like he's been testing it and
issues.
He's obviously enjoying it. So I see maybe in a couple of months we'll see if he keeps hold of that. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very good deck, as we've seen. They have to have a lot of counter magic or they win, basically.
What do you think the advantages of Omnitell is over Sneak and Show? Like, what version? What does it do specifically? Which matchups are improved? Which matchups are weaker?
Over Sneak and Show?
Over Sneak and Show.
I'd say that
your D&T matchup is probably better because you don't have to worry about Caracas bouncing your things, and that's quite a difficult matchup. So getting an extra 10% there, that's probably pretty good.
Because everything's in a wish board, you can run a lot more hand manipulation.
You play safer to disruption as well.
Yep. Very low number of non-basic lands. Also makes Wastelands basically a dead card.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie's had 2 Wastelands sitting on his side of the table for most of this game, and it hasn't done anything for him. And I think the downside is it's just not as explosive as Sneak and Show. So that's where those are the trade-offs, right? I think this one's got a little bit more resiliency, but I mean, you can turn one Show and Tell into Emrakul.
I mean, I would agree, but David can go turn 1, turn 2 into Show and Tell into Omniscience into Enter the Infinite.
Sure. So he has to have 3 pieces, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, and
I mean, there's advantages
you
and
can open with
to each deck, and I'm just curious as to. If I had to guess, I would say that the Sneak and Show deck is maybe a little bit quicker on average, and that's where it gets its advantage.
I'd say when playing off against each other, I would probably be more inclined for Omnitell to win, but just because David's Omnitell deck can make value out of his opponent's Show and Tells, whereas his opponent can't make value out of his because he is going to be winning, basically.
Yeah, okay, because if your opponent casts Show and Tell, you can usually...
Right, if they cast Show and Tell, they're going to have to be doing it at 4 or 5 mana when they can put a sneak attack into play and actually activate it as well.
Because if you Show and Tell, then they put into play Omniscience or something,
But even in response, David could say, put in Omniscience, and you put in Sneak Attack, and David responds by Cunning Wishing for those Trick Binds that we saw.
Yeah, I like Trick Bind as tech, that's cool.
Yeah, Trick Bind the...
Okay, so...
Trigger.
Back to the game for a moment, because we're seeing quite an intense moment. David's cast his Dream Holes, and Charlie's just said no with a Force of Will, and we're seeing a Pact of Negation on the way back here. Not quite sure who has priority at the moment, but it looks like there's a little bit of thinking. David shuffling around a bit. I believe he has Flusterstorm in hand at this point, and Flusterstorm would be for 4. But I'm not sure if Charlie even has a response here. It's a little bit interesting to see who has priority. Okay, he's passed priority back to Charlie.
Okay, so Charlie's attempting to put in...
Okay, so...
Spell Pierce. Okay.
Okay, so I'm wondering why True Name is on the battlefield. Oh, True Name is on the battlefield. He's activated...
He's violed it in. Yeah.
He's violed it in response.
Okay, so I think if you're David here, there's been 4 spells cast this turn.
There's actually 1, 2, 3, 4. This it's going to be counted as the 5th.
Right, so you just aim all of them at Force of Will and let him counter your
Pact of Negation, so
Pact
you
of
don't have to pay
Negation,
at the upkeep.
and, yeah. And now we're going to see an Enter the Infinite, is it?
Yep.
And there's the concession from Charlie. So, yeah, that's basically the deck. The Show and Tell just wants to show you... Omnitell just wants to show you Enter the Infinite and go off.
Which is a great card. I love Omniscience as a card because I believe it was Unglued. There was the card called Mox Lotus, and it was a joke. It was 15 mana, and you'd tap it to add infinite mana, because then you can channel it through all these different ways. And it's a joke card,
and you
right?
have protection from mana burn.
Yeah.
From way back in
and
the
then
day.
they go and just actually print it as an actual card, except cheaper, and you can do it at any time.
And they put it in blue because...
And you put it in blue so it can pitch to Force of Will.
Yeah.
So it was a joke, and then 5 years later they're just like...
so you can pitch to Force of Will.
Let's actually just print that in blue.
Yeah.
That seems like a good idea. At a cheaper mana cost.
Absolutely. Anyway, this has been Caleb House, and joining me today was Ben Clinic for Full House Games. Please stay tuned for the rest of the episodes, and stay tuned to Full House Games for Magic and more.